Yeah.
Hello everybody, Savat the Mighty here, and I am back with another Eve Echoes video. So in today's video, I wanted to actually talk about armor tanking and shield tanking. So a lot of people are saying that shield tanking is just ultimately the best. Armor tanking definitely needs to have some type of buff as it is in a very sore spot. And, well, I agree and disagree. I do think armor tanking is worse than shield tanking if you're looking for total overall resistances, but it does have its place, and that's one of the things that we're actually going to cover and try to go over today and take a look and see when armor tanking is going to be useful for you and when shield tanking is going to be useful for you. And we're going to take a look at a couple of different ships and just kind of compare and do an all-around review on the armor tank versus the shield tank. Okay, so before we jump into this, if you do like my content, please leave a like on the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you don't want to be notified whenever I do release anything in the future. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need to figure out if we want to compare our tanks and find out what tank is actually going to be better, we need to figure out how much damage per second we can actually take. So I went ahead and I fit out this ship here for an armor tank, where now we're looking at an Amarr Abaddon. This is a tier 10 Amarr ship, and it is supposed to be an armor tank. So one of the things this ship does get is with Battleship Command bonus per level, it's getting plus 4% additional armor resistances. So how are we going to figure out what this ship can actually tank DPS-wise? We know the defense of this ship is the total effective defense is 149,675, but it has a portion of that in its structure and in the shields. And we don't really care about those for the purposes of this. What we want to know is how much DPS per second can this ship take without actually going down. So we don't care how many hit points it actually does have. That's going to be a buffer. So basically what we're looking at is just the core, what the shield reppers, or the armor reppers in this case, are going to be repairing, and what is going to be our damage threshold. When are we actually going to start taking a deficit where we'll be in damage or in danger and be put on a timer where we have to eliminate damage off of the battlefield, otherwise we're going to start to go down and be eventually taken out. And to do this, we have to do math. All right, so normally whenever I take my ships out, I'm going to fight mainly Gallente ships. So what I've done here is I went ahead and rigged for it just like I would. So I have an anti-kinetic pump 3, which is giving us the kinetic resistance, and an anti-thermal pump 3, which is giving us thermal resistance. These resistances are going to come into play with our formula. Now over here, and I'm also going to do the same thing with the shield ships, so don't worry, there's going to be, everything is going to stay consistent. And we're going to look at them kind of flip-flopped as well. But hear me out here. We have an armor repair bonus of 30%. This is also going to play into this as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and undock here, because we have to get the numbers that we're going to need. Okay, so we're out here now. I'm going to go ahead and stop, and we're going to turn on all of our hardeners, because we want to know exactly where we're going to be at. So if we go into the fitting here, we go to defense, and we're going to look at just our armor. Again, we don't care about the armor hit points too terribly much here, because they're not really going to play into a factor of what we can actually tank DPS-wise. So what we are going to look at is we're going to be fighting Gallente ships. They're going to do primarily kinetic and thermal. So since I don't know the breakdown of their weapons, I have assumptions that I can make, but just to keep it as simple as possible, what I'm going to do is look at my thermal and my kinetic resistances, 83 and 80% respectively. The lower of those two is 80%, so I'm going to work off the 80%, just knowing it's going to be a little bit better than what I actually come out with. Alright, the next thing I want to do, since I know what percent I'm working off now, I'm going to make note of that, 80%. I am going to take note of what I can actually repair. So on this fit here, I have an armor repair of 1,782 for every 10.9 seconds. If I'm to run both repairers, which I can, I'm going to be doing 1,782 times 2. So 1,782 times 2 is 3,564. I'm going to take that 3,564 and I'm going to divide that by 10.9, which is going to give me 326.97. Because my resistance is going to be overall a little bit higher, I'm just going to go ahead and round that to 327. All right. So what does that mean? That means with just those hardeners running, I can repair 327 DPS a second. I'm going to write that down. Now I know I can repair 327 DPS a second. However, I don't know how much damage that actually is going to be unless I do the formula. So what I'm looking here is, again, our lowest is at 80%. So what I'm going to do is what minus 80% is 327. When I calculate that, I'm going to get 1,635. So 1,635. So as long as I am taking thermal and kinetic damage, I can take, again, it's off a little bit because we have that little extra percentage on the thermal, but this ship, fighting the Gallente ships, can take about 1,635 damage per second and take that without going into a deficit. So as long as I'm taking the 1,635 or less, this ship can never be destroyed, ever, because it's cap stable. So it's going to be able to go for an indefinite amount of time and take that 1,635 DPS. That's pretty impressive. Now that is with the hardeners running. Obviously we do have this guy over here that is going to change that, and it's going to get a little bit better over time as well. But overall, that's going to give us a good place to start. So we know we can take that 1,635 damage per second. And then if we are taking more, we have a cushion of 42,831 armor hit points. So basically that cushion is, after we start getting over that 1,635 damage per second, we're actually going to start going down, and we'll have to try to kill stuff before we remove that, but we have a time frame to do so. And so, for example, if something was doing 1,935 damage per second to us, we're basically taking 300 damage per second. So we can just divide our hit points by that amount there, and that'll give us an estimate of how long we have to eliminate that damage. So 300, so if we have, 42,831 divided by 300, we have 142 seconds. A little over 2 minutes to actually eliminate some of that damage to get it down. Stuff doing that type of damage within that time frame, those couple of minutes, hopefully you can take out enough ships to be able to survive. So that's how you would figure out that tank. Now, the cool thing about that is, I'm using kind of an extreme example here. So this ship is a tier 10 ship, and it's actually running 2 hardeners, or I'm sorry, not hardeners, 2 large armor reppers, and it's running the 3 hardeners, and it's sitting at cap stable. This part is important. So this ship has that tank, and it is able to be cap stable doing so. Now that is taking into account that you're going to be using this Vikrolakis large energy Nosferatu, mind you, but I mean, as long as you're within optimal range, and this one is a close range fit and everything, so it should be there and have a ship to be draining off of while it's doing that. So this one is cap stable, it's able to stay cap stable and have that tank up all of the time. Now that's where our big difference comes in with the shield tanks compared to the armor tanks. And we'll go in here, I'm going to go ahead and dock this ship. I'm actually going to refit this same ship with a shield tank, and we're going to do a little bit of comparison using the identical ship. And don't worry, like I said, we're going to look at some shield tanks and see what they do as well. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, we're back with the same ship fitted out with a shield tank. Now, one of the reasons why I decided to do this ship here is it is primarily an armor tank and has bonuses to that armor tanking, and I really wanted to put this to the ultimate test and see if shield tanking is actually going to be better for this ship. So the only thing that was changed on here was the rigs were replaced with the equivalent rigs for shield tanking. So we have the thermal, the kinetic, and we also have basically the equivalent of the fuel pump, which is going to give us a shield boost amount. We have 2 large shield boosters put in here. We have replaced the hardeners with 2 of the adaptive hardeners and 1 of the reactive hardeners, but for shield tanking. And everything else has remained identical. So I'm going to go ahead and undock this ship, and we're going to put the same formula into effect here to see how much this ship can actually withstand. And see where we're at. Okay, so let's stop moving. Let's activate all of our hardeners, and let's take a look here. So remember, this ship did get advantages to its armor for the purposes of resistances, and it's not getting those for these shields. Alright, so we have 65, 82, 87, and 84. So as we can see, the thermal and the kinetic resistances are what we're looking at again. And we do want to take the lower of the two. In this case, it's going to be that 82%. So it does look like even without having the bonuses, it's actually higher on the resistance. Our lowest resistance was 80% with the armor. Now it's 82%, so it's actually gone up with the shield tanking. So that just proves right there, which you could have done yourself with any shield and armor explanation, and see that the shield itself is going to take more damage or reduce more damage. But there's a lot more to it than that. Alright, so let's do our formulas again and figure out exactly what this thing can do. So where is my calculator? I lost it. Okay. So the shields boost for 1,188. We are going to times that by 2, which is 2,376. And then we're going to divide that by 6.16. And this is 385.71, which we can basically round up to 386. Okay, so we know it's going to stop 386 DPS. 386 damage per second is just going to be mitigated raw on this ship. But now we have to use our formula, and that is going to be, for this one it was 82%, I believe? Yes, alright. So we're going to take 82%. So what minus 82% is 327? And that is going to be 1,816.66. So 1,816.66. So just to put that in comparison, if you weren't here for the first part, or if you just don't remember, our armor tank was soaking damage per second 1,635. The shield tank will actually soak 1,816.66 per second. Now here's where the big difference comes in. So this definitely does do more. It is going to do more, and it's going to protect you a whole lot better, even though it does not have the same bonuses that the armor one did. However, if we look here, nothing else changed. The capacitor on this ship is sitting at 6 minutes and 27 seconds. What does that mean? Well, that means that the shield tanking, yes, is better for overall damage. Absolutely. And just about every single ship it's going to be better. However, armor tanking is going to be better for a more cap-stable ship. So, if you have a ship where you're comfortable microing your damage mitigation, then your shield tanking is obviously going to be the way to go. However, if you want to be able to turn stuff on, go AFK, be able to rep for days, then armor tanking is the way to go. So shield tanking is going to give you higher, not as consistent damage mitigation. where armor tanking is going to give you lower damage resistance overall, but it's going to let you do it for a much longer time. So to put that into perspective, if I was to take this ship into a news mission, I could shield tank it all day long and be absolutely happy with the outcome. If I was to take it into a tier 10 mission, I would only be able to do this much for 6 minutes and 27 seconds. After that, I would only be able to either A, run one booster, and I'd have to micro going those back and forth, or I would have to find a way to get out before, or stop the damage before I get blown up. Now, the shield hit points in this ship is 29,713. So again, if we were taking 300 more damage, you're only going to have so much time. So 300 more damage per second. If we have 29 divided by that 300, get about 99 seconds. So a little less than a minute in that scenario. However, that damage is going to be a lot higher. Where in our first scenario, we're doing 1,900. If we did 300 damage in this one, you're looking at 2,100 damage per second would have to be coming in to get to that number. So is shield taking better? Well, that's for you to decide. If you're in a shorter mission, then shield tanking is probably the best way to go with your ships. If you're having capacitor issues on your ship, or are trying to get a much more stable fit to last longer for longer encounters, again, if you come into a T10 with the armor tanking, you can basically leave everything on, go around, not particularly have to worry about getting nuded into the ground, where if you're stuck with your shield tank, you'd have to really worry about newts and cap drain. So I do think there is a place for armor tanking. If you're doing long engagements and need to make sure that your cap stays higher, you're definitely going to want to armor tank. If you're doing shorter engagements or know that you can cycle through your stuff and make sure everything is working, then shield tanking is going to give you overall more resistances for less. And so does that mean armor tanking is bad? Absolutely not. There's something to be said for actually turning on your armor reppers, sitting out there in a battlefield and being able to just mitigate it all and not really have to worry about much of anything. Maybe go get a soda, come back, you're okay. If you try to go make lunch and come back shield tanking something, you might be blowed up when you come back. However, armor tanking something, as long as you're under that threshold, you have less of a total threshold for damage per second, but you can last pretty much forever in certain fits. So you really have to look at your ship and see how long your tank is going to last and see if it's going to be good for you. If you're going to be doing those longer encounters, armor tanking might actually end up being better, and you'll have to make your decision based off of that. So that's pretty much all of it in a nutshell. As far as the explanation for the armor tanking versus shield tanking, I'm not going to say one is better than the other. Shield tanking is definitely, like I said, going to give you higher resistances and let you take more damage per second overall, regardless of what ship you're in. And ships specialized for it, it's going to be even better. However, armor tanking does have its place. It is going to let you make a lot of ships cap stable and be able to tank for a lot longer than the shield tanks can. You're really going to have to make the decision on, is shield tanking or armor tanking right for you, and does it fit your playstyle that you like to play with? So, that being said, I am going to jump into a shield tank now, and we'll take a look at the differences from that perspective. I'll be right back. Okay, so here I am with the Rock. The Rock itself is the equivalent of the tier 10 ship with plus 4% shield resistances per level. So we're going to take a look at this guy and apply the same kind of stuff that we did. I did go ahead and outfit it with the guns. I didn't put any drones on here because the drones don't really matter too terribly much for our purposes here today. So I have this set up in the same exact way. We have the two large shield boosters. We have two of the invulnerability fields and one of the reactive armor hardener. Still running the afterburner in here. And for the rigs, I'm set up the same. I don't think I went over this with the other ship, but I have a semiconductor memory cell in here for the capacitor capacity. And then I am running two capacitor control circuits. And that does give the overall optimal time in my research that I've done for that, for at least these two ships. That could vary based off of the ship, based off of the power grid, and the recharge time of the given ships. Over here, I do have a core defense, basically that 30% shield boost. We have the thermal and the kinetic screens as well. So we're really going to get to see what this ship is able to put out. And so if we undock here, I also did have the Vikralakis Energy Vampire on there as well. Nosferatu. Okay. So we're just going to go ahead and stop. This will serve our purposes just fine. And the first thing we're going to actually take a look at here is see the capacitor, 4 minutes and 6 seconds. It's not actually going to last that long at all. However, we turn on all of our stuff. What we're looking at here is we're looking at the thermal and kinetic. Overall, EM resistance is 72, thermal 87, kinetic 89, explosive 86. So if we're fighting the Gallente ships, we're looking our weakest resistance is 87%. So we're just going to go ahead and write down that 87%. And our shield boost, 1,188. And times that by 2 gives us 2,376. And 2,376 divided by 6.16. 385.71, we're going to round that up to 386. So it's just the same as last time. So we already know 386, and the 386 gives us 1,816. No, that's wrong. I forgot to change my numbers here. So we want to do 87%. So what minus 87% is going to be the 386? Okay, that's going to be 2,969. Yeah, 2,969.23. So this has a damage soaking potential of 2,969.23. And that's going to last for a total of 4 minutes and 6 seconds. And so that's pretty insane. That can stop a lot of damage over that 4 minutes and 6 seconds. There's not really going to be too terribly much that you can worry about on there. Now, also too, let's go ahead and dock up. Yeah, that's just crazy. 2,969 damage. But what we want to also see here is I kind of do want to showcase this as well. So this is lasting 4 minutes and 6 seconds. If you unfit one of the shields, you are actually stable with one. So with one of these going, and all in all, I want to be completely fair. And so why I want to be completely fair is because you can get cap stable with the armor tank with both of them running, but the 1,188 divided by 6.16, it gives us 192.85. We're just going to say 193. So we have 193 damage per second that we can mitigate. 193, and we're looking at 87%. That gives us, with one, 1,484.61. So 1,484.61 you can be stable at all of the time. If we look at the capacitor on this ship, it's just barely stable, but it is stable all the time. And then you can actually activate the second one to boost up whenever you need to mitigate up to that 2,969.23. meaning that this ship is an absolute beast. If we were looking at our other ship with both of them running all the time, it was at 1,816. This one is only 400 points shy of that with just one running. And it's going to be able to run with everything on there. Another thing that we have to take into consideration too is you might not have the afterburner running all the time. That definitely puts us up to being way more stable. And if we put another large shield booster on here, we are no longer stable. It's only going to last for 5 minutes, so that really doesn't help mitigate too terribly much when we have both of them going, but it is going to give you more. I just kind of wanted to show off how you could actually juggle the different modules in order to keep your shield up, meaning that if you are good at bouncing back and forth and turning the right things off and on, you can keep that going for quite a while, even indefinitely. The armor version of it is just kind of more of your lazier approach. So for a bunch of your middling battles, your armor tank itself, it's going to last forever, but it's definitely not going to do as much as the shield tanking. Much more of a lazy man's approach. All right, let's go ahead and swap the rigs up on here. I'm just going to go ahead and do this one here if I have them. Okay, and here we are with the armor fit. So the armor fit here, we just kind of replaced everything. We have the 2 large armor reppers now. And other than that, we've replaced everything with everything that's the equivalent. And we're going to go ahead and undock, and we'll take a look at this one here. And so one of the biggest things here is the different types of ship have different types of power grids. And that's kind of where you're going to have to do some juggling with this as well. So let's go ahead and stop again. What we're looking at here is this ship is sitting here at 59 minutes and 46 seconds. So it's not actually quite cap stable with this loadout. And it is definitely going to be a whole lot worse than what it was with the other one as far as it comes there, but it still will work. All right, so what are we looking at here? I want to just double check and make sure I have the correct rigs on here. We have an armor repair bonus, we have kinetic, and we have thermal. Perfect. So if we're looking at our kinetic and thermal, what we're actually looking at is 75% resistance on this ship for the armor. So 75, and the armor pumps are doing 1,782. Okay. So 1,782 times 2 is 3,564 divided by 10.9, 326.97, so 327, the same as before. So 327, and our lowest is 75%. And so if we put in 75%, at 327, 1,308. So this one will mitigate 1,308 DPS, and it'll do that for just about an hour. And so as we can see there, you can see that actually having the armor tank on, regardless of what ship that you're going to use, is going to protect you for less overall, but it's going to be able to do it for a much, much longer time. We're looking at a huge percentage of increase there by moving over to the armor tank. So I just kind of wanted to showcase that there. Armor tanking, yes, while it is overall worse in the grand scheme of things when it comes to tanking, if you're just looking at raw stats, it can last for a whole lot longer. And that's kind of the point that I wanted to make. And so depending on what type of content that you're doing and what you're comfortable doing with it, you may actually prefer to do the armor tank. I mean, if you're able to hit those numbers and you can mitigate it forever, then you can mitigate it forever. However, ultimately, and the right ships, shield tanking is just going to blow armor tanking out of the water, especially when it comes to shorter engagements. That being said, for PvP, shield tanking does seem like would be the best way to go for small scale PvP, as it's going to give you an overall boost to your protection. However, that being said as well, sometimes in PvP you run with a lot of capacitor issues depending on what you're trying to run. Food for thought, food for thought. So why don't you guys tell me, do you guys prefer armor tanking or shield tanking? And if so, why? Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. Thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate everything. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I will see you in the next video.